Welcome to the Sci-Fi Diner Classic. This is episode 27. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Herzog.
And hello, I'm Miles P. McLaughlin.
And tonight, we are bringing a classic interview. It's classic, it's about 2 years old, I guess? Mm-hmm. Interview that we did with Brea Grant.
Right.
Now, how in the heck would people know Brea Grant?
Well, she played, she was the female Flash in Heroes.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Officer Parkman's love interest.
And Hiro Nakamura's Nemesis.
Oh, yes. And, wow, talk about a character that grew on you. You weren't sure you could trust her at the beginning, but she grew on you.
I was disappointed that they had killed her off.
Yes, I think a lot of people were, but then again, the way the show was going...
It was going off the rails.
It was off the rails anyways. So
she was one of the high points of it.
She was definitely one of the things. And so when she was gone, what else was there to watch in Heroes? Sylar just busting heads.
And that gets old after a while.
It does.
Yeah.
Now, if he would pull that stunt in Star Trek, I'd be totally for it.
Well, someone's going to be happy in Star Trek.
Yeah, but not that.
No, right.
But anyways, back to Brea Grant. She did with her brother,
right, a
comic book, right?
A zombie comic book.
A zombie comic book, and this is what this interview is about, and it's still available. So if you have not, if you're into zombie comics and you want to try see what she did, she's done tons of different work. But you know her from Heroes, but she's also done some comic work, and we hope you enjoy this interview.
This is Brea Grant from Heroes and writer of We Will Bury You, and you're listening to the Sci-Fi Diner Podcast.
I'm here to help you, Matt.
Daphne, don't! No.
Matt.
No.
You gotta come back.
Daphne, don't!
Matt? Matt, wake up! Matt, wake up! Matt, you've gotta wake up! Wake up, Matt! Matt, wake up! Bring me in there! Matt, you have to take me in there. Matt, we gotta go, now!
Get away from me.
I can't help you.
Oh, you stabbed me.
That wasn't me. Don't believe her, Matt. Take it from me.
A woman will betray you at every turn.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't mind being called a geek or a nerd. I'm sure many of you, our listeners, feel the same way. Well, tonight we get to speak with a real geek goddess who has crossed into the sci-fi, horror, and comic book genres. If you enjoyed such shows as Cold Case, CSI Miami, and Heroes, having played Hiro Nakamura's Speedy Nemesis, and if you have also enjoyed such horror movies as Halloween 2, then you have enjoyed the work of our guest tonight, the lovely Miss Brea Grant. Miss Grant, welcome and thank you for taking time to talk with us on the Sci-Fi Diner podcast.
Oh, yeah, thanks for having me.
I just want to say I loved your character, Daphne on Heroes, and was very mad when they killed her off. There was other people that they should have killed off before you.
Wow, should I ask you who?
Well, I mean, been some.
Yeah, Miles. Who would you want to kill off? Come on.
Yeah.
Tracy. You wanted Tracy knocked off.
I have a direct line to Tim Crane. I'm going to call him and let him know what you think.
Yeah.
Not really. Not at all.
Oh, man. There were certainly a lot of good, memorable moments in Heroes, and a lot of them you were in. It was kind of sad to see you go.
Oh, thanks.
So if I remember correctly, you kind of joined the cast of Heroes when? In season 3? It wasn't at the beginning, right?
Right, yeah, season 3.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about how did you end up on Heroes? I mean, here you are, you're doing, I guess the other show that you were kind of regular on, maybe at least semi, was Friday Night Lights. You were on a few episodes.
Right, yeah. I had gone and started doing Friday Night Lights at the beginning of the writer's strike, which happened during that time. I don't know if the rest of the world was aware of it, but I think most people knew it was going on. And I did 3 episodes, and that was all they had written, and then the season ended because of the writer's strike. And I have no idea if my character would have gone on and done, been around more, or if that was the end of my run there. But I did that, and then I got this phone call. I went back to L.A. because Friday Night Lights shoots in Texas, and I got this phone call when I got back to L.A., and they said, the writers from Heroes really like you, and they wrote this role, and they want you to come in and read for it. And, Friday Night Lights was actually my first TV show that I had done a couple of guest stars before that, but Friday Night Lights was the first big thing I had done. So that was so out of nowhere that anybody was even aware of who I was. So I went in and read and then tested up against a couple of people and ended up starting the show not too long after those Friday Night Lights episodes aired. So I think all that aired in the fall of, oh, God, I don't even know what year it was. I have no idea. It was in the fall, and then I was on Heroes by the summer, which is pretty fast in the acting world.
That is. When Heroes was 2008 was when you were on Heroes.
2008, yeah, right. So my Friday Night Lights stuff aired I shot it in the fall of 2007. I think it aired early 2008.
Yeah, I think that's what IMDb is saying. If it's accurate, it's not always. That
sounds about right. I went and did Friday Night Lights, and I went back and had to wait tables again because the writer's strike was going on. I couldn't get a job, and I was waiting tables when I got the phone call from Heroes.
The only good thing to come out of the writing strike, well, probably for writers as well, as writers, there was good stuff for writers, but from us as the audience and people watching was Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog.
That's right.
We wouldn't have had that if it wasn't for the writing strike. So I'm glad for that purpose only. But that obviously was not good necessarily for you as far as acting goes.
Right. It was not good. But there were some good things that came out of it. And I think a lot of people wrote some good stuff during the strike. They couldn't sell it or anything, but I think maybe they were at home coming up with brilliant ideas, hopefully.
Oh, yeah. Well, we certainly hope so. And that's kind of cool that, people were noticing you. They kind of wrote that role just for you in Heroes.
Yeah, yes and no. I like to think so. But I think in reality, the story they tell me is that they said, oh, we'd love a girl like that girl from Friday Night Lights. And they were like, well, let's see if that girl's busy and bring her in. And I still had to audition and do, a big song and dance to get the role. But, it was nice having some people on my team when I went in, for sure. Some people who were pulling for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, your character had the power of speed. So a lot of special effects had to go into making you look like you were running extremely fast. Or the scene where you're beating the crap out of Siler in that alternate timeline.
Right.
I'm interested. Can you tell us how some of that look was accomplished?
The magic of movie making. I was actually running around a lot. I was doing a lot of running. But everybody stood really still while I ran by, and, they would speed up the cameras, and that's sort of it. Some of it was on green screen, and to be honest, I don't understand the difference between when you use green screen and when you don't. But for the most part, it was people standing really still while I ran, and then they would just speed everything up. Mm-hmm. Similar to Mossy's power, where everybody, he would freeze time, but in reality, everybody was just standing really still, and and that was how they froze time on the show.
Right. And those made for some real good scenes when you saw those types of effects happening. They were almost just as cool as some of the stuff they actually did special effects with. It
was kind of an amazing. I feel like they really. I keep saying it was not that big of a deal, but they definitely thought it all out, and especially just the first scene I was in where time was paused, and then there's papers hanging in the air and stuff, and that's all either CGI or just amazing production design. Someone actually making things stand in the air and stuff, and that's sort of the fun part of Heroes, is that every episode had such a decent sized budget that they could do something like that, which is amazing, because a lot of shows like that I feel like don't have the budgets to pull off the amazing effects that they had.
Did you have a stunt double that you had to work with, or was it you doing everything?
For the most part, it was me. They're very protective of actors, because I guess if I break my ankle or something, then they're pretty screwed for a while.
Right.
But
True.
Yeah, I don't know who they would have running around. So during the fight scenes, they would have me do a lot of it. But then when it came to falling and stuff like that, they no one wants me to be doing that. First of all, I don't really know how. I'm sort of a weakling, and so I think I would get hurt. But yeah, they tend to have a lot of stunt doubles. But I get to do a lot of stuff like punch and kick and that kind of stuff.
What was the working atmosphere like on Heroes? Was it laid back, or did the directors run a tight ship? It
was unlike other shows I had done in that they take a lot of time to shoot one episode for sure. I think it was about for each episode, and you shouldn't quote me on this because I'm not sure, but I think it was between 10 days and 2 weeks to shoot one episode, which is a lot for television. Long. Yeah, and which I think, to be honest, I think that's one of the things that happened is that, that it gets expensive, to do that, to have that many characters and that many effects and that long of a time frame. They always had 2 shoots going at once, so, they would be shooting 2 episodes simultaneously, pretty much, 2 units going. And so for that reason, it was like, rush, but at the same time, they had a little bit more time than some TV shows, for sure.
Well, now I'm going to ask you a question. And if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But looking back on Heroes, many people have said since Heroes went off the air that it ended to mixed reactions. Hardcore fans obviously loved the show up to the end, but then there were people that felt like it lost its way after a few seasons. Do you want to comment at all about that? Because, obviously you you must be a sci-fi fan yourself to be doing a lot of the sci-fi you do. I didn't know if you have any retrospective on that or any thoughts on that.
What are my thoughts about that? It's funny. People say that to me a lot, actually, that people like to walk up to me, strangers, and say, Heroes really got really crappy, but you were really great. I guess doesn't hurt my feelings because it wasn't like I was writing the show. I guess, I was given material and did what I could do. It's really hard to look at something and say that's good or bad when you're in it.
Yeah.
Which you think I'd be able to step back at this point, and honestly, I haven't gone back to watch those episodes in, a very long time. I watched them when they were on the air, and I haven't watched any of them since. So I don't know. And I don't know if I should admit this, but I actually didn't watch the season after I died. Once I'm on a show, I didn't watch the rest of Friday Night Lights either. Once I'm on a show, I kind of don't watch anymore because it takes away a lot of the magic for me. So I had watched Heroes up until that point when I came on. But then after that, it's like, I watch it and I'm like, oh, yeah, I know. That's on, like, that soundstage. And, it's just not.
Oh, it's true.
It's not the same. I know, what writer wrote the episode. So it's sort of like the magic's gone. So I'm not sure if I could tell you whether or not it was good or bad after
right.
when I joined.
Well, I think no matter where you fall on it, there are certainly characters and there's moments in the later season, especially season 4. And did they go to a season 5? I don't even remember anymore.
No, I think season 4 is the last.
Yeah, there are certainly moments with Samuel and many others that really stuck out. And there was actors' performances that stuck out, even if the scripting maybe was less than stellar. But, I would say even there's probably some writing moments that were strong. And looking at some of your recent work, though, let's move on from Heroes here. You've been doing a little bit more in the horror genre, it seems like. Is that something? And one of our listeners actually asked, what kind of draws you, I guess in general, to the sci-fi, but maybe to horror and thriller movies? Do you kind of seek those out, or do they kind of come to you?
Something... That's a good question. I guess it's a chicken and egg thing, but something definitely happens once you start doing stuff that in the sci-fi horror genre that then people do seek you out for it. So I think I've like openly said that I love horror movies. I love sci-fi. I've always loved sci-fi, and so. That does mean that people send me a lot of those scripts, probably more than someone sends me, the romantic comedy. In fact, I would actually say no one has ever sent me a romantic comedy saying, I want you to play the lead. not ever once. Which is fine by me, although I could go for a romantic comedy every once in a while. But what draws me to it, one, the people are sending them to me, so I definitely read a lot more of them and probably have a stronger opinion about them. But I don't know. It's always been what I've liked. I think I sort of have the tastes of a 14-year-old boy, in that I like movies where things blow up and people are screaming, and I like that stuff. And I think there's still so much room in those genres, whereas with romantic comedies or something like that, I rarely see something that I think is innovative and new. Whereas it's cool to see what's happening, I think, in the horror world and in the sci-fi world.
Yeah.
That's a very non-specific answer. I don't know if it should be like the blood or the bad guys. I mean, I don't know. I just think that one, fortunately for actresses, there's a lot of women in horror movies, which is super rad, and women and strong women at that, which is cool, and sci-fi as well. I mean, you can't talk about sci-fi without talking about Alien or something, and just talking about the strong women that are in those movies. And so when I read a script like that, it's often that I'm reading about some strong female lead, and I like that. I think that's something for me to be drawn to, for sure.
Do you have a favorite strong female lead? You mentioned obviously the Alien movie, but do you have a strong female lead that you really have loved in horror or maybe sci-fi?
In movies?
Yes.
Or in television, or just in movies?
Either or both. So.
In TV, I would definitely say I loved Alias, which is a little less genre-y, but and I loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was definitely my favorite show, hands down, forever. For movies, I love Ripley, obviously. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I do the same in comics. I definitely am drawn to the comics with strong women. Like, I love Cassie Hack. I read Hack / that's one of my favorite comics. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. Like, specific strong female leads, I don't know.
Yeah.
Those are the ones I'll go to, though.
Yeah. So if you're a Buffy fan, are you also a browncoat?
Oh my God! I listened to you guys' podcast with the Browncoats. By the way, I haven't seen it. I love to hear them talk, though. It was kind of inspiring to listen to them talk. I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but I loved the idea of them making their own thing, and then to hear them talk about the people recognizing them was just sort of like heartwarming to me. But I haven't seen it. I loved Firefly, but I haven't seen the Browncoat movie.
Oh, yeah.
What is it called? It's called Browncoats?
Yes, Browncoats Redemption. But I was actually more insinuating, or do you love Firefly, basically?
Oh, I see what the question was. Yes, I did love Firefly. It was, I guess I still do.
Yeah, and some strong female characters in that as well.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
So now you're a comic book writer. Tell us about that.
I wrote a book that started coming out maybe about a year ago, called We Will Bury You. I co-wrote it with my brother. And then it came out in trade form a few months ago. And then now I'm co-writing another one, which is the SuicideGirls comic book. And they're both out on IDW. And I think SuicideGirls comes out in April. Don't quote me on that, though. I'm not sure about that.
Let's talk about these comic books for a little bit. Tell me, what is We Will Bury You about? We
Will Bury You is a zombie comic set in the 1920s. And my brother sort of had this idea to write about characters that you don't typically see in sort of these like leadership roles. There's like a zombie apocalypse, and then you follow politicians and cops and people with money and people who have all these skills. And we wanted to follow people who have not typical skills, but more like street smarts. So we followed. The story centers around a prostitute, a taxi hall dancer, which is, it's paying for dances or possibly more, and a thief, and they're both lesbians, and we follow them and see how they fight the zombies in the zombie apocalypse of the jazz era.
Right. So any reason we're set in the jazz era itself?
Well, for a lot of reasons. One, that's one of I was a history major. That's one of my favorite eras. But two, I think there was just a lot of changes going on. One, well, we played with time just a little bit, but there were, the crash of the stock market, women's rights, and also just things going on in Spain, Spanish Revolution, stuff like that. So we kind of wanted to combine all these historic events that were happening and put a bunch of zombies in the middle of it, if that makes sense.
Well, and that gives you a lot of material to pull from then, too.
It does.
Yeah.
Zombies are hot right now, kind of like the way vampires were a couple of years ago. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't know. Zane and I like to tell people that we started writing this comic when I was still on Heroes, so 3 years ago. We started writing it. We like to think we were ahead of the curve, but then it took us a long time to get it done. As projects go, artists dropped out. We had to redo a bunch of stuff. Whatever. So we like to think we're ahead of the curve. I don't really know if we were. I don't know. I think, for a while it was pirates, I feel like, and then maybe robots, and then vampires, and now zombies. I have a theory maybe werewolves are next.
Oh,
so,
maybe.
Yeah,
right.
Maybe.
And then ghosts or something like that.
Ghosts is a good one.
Yeah, that would also work. Yeah, I was just curious because we do seem to go in phases in science fiction and horror, and I think one of the resurgences with zombies right now has, of course, been Walking Dead. And
yeah.
have you read the comics or seen the show?
Yeah, both actually. I loved the comics, and I've liked most of the episodes of the show. I feel like they came on pretty strong, and I feel like they're kind of still finding their way. But they were good. I mean, they were good, and I thought the effects were good. And I think AMC is doing some really cool stuff right now.
Mm-hmm. And the response to "We Will Bury You" has been overall positive, I assume.
It is and it isn't. It's a weird thing. It's funny, when I first started writing it, a lot of people were like, "Oh, you're an actress. What the hell are you doing? You're trying to write a comic book," which is weird because I guess the assumption is that we're dumb, but but it's weird that people don't assume that we're creative.
Right. You want to diversify too.
Yeah, and for me, I'm sort of a creative person who gets bored really easily, and actors, we have a lot of downtime. I mean, time when we're working, I mean, I may go on several auditions a week, but I'm not going to book them all, so at best we're working, if we're on a show, we're working, 8 months out of the year. That leaves a good couple months for me to sit around and lose my mind. So, I'm going to be writing something or doing something else, taking up some sort of hobby, and writing comics made the most sense for me because I already read so many comics.
Right. And really it's not that far of a departure from, a lot of actors write scripts. Why not write a script for a comic?
Yeah. And, it's funny. Zane and I originally started writing scripts, and we quickly realized that it was not terrain we were familiar with at that moment. So we moved over to comics. I mean, Zane, my brother, he also writes short stories and stuff. And now I'm trying to write more scripts as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think, as an actor, you can do a couple of things. You can, use your downtime as that, and hang out and do whatever you want, which I think is totally legit. But for me, I have to stay a little bit busy, or else I just could not be just an actor. I think it would kill me. Right.
Well, now, you obviously you must have a fairly close relationship with your brother to be involved with the comic creation with him, and then in other projects as well.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the process of taking a comic from beginning to publishing. I mean, what's that like?
Oh, well, I think it's different from everyone. We pitched, and we pitched like a normal people would, and sent over our ideas, and IDW let us write it. I think we pitched 12 issues, and they were like, "We'll give you 4," which we were happy with. We were very ambitious. And then, at the time, we actually had Ben Temple-Smith for all of our interiors, and he actually couldn't do it because he went to go do Dead Space, or Dead Space 2 or something. Then we had to find an artist, and then, you write a script, and then the artist starts drawing, and you realize that everything you've written is total crap, and you wrote things that are way too complicated and way too much for one panel, so you end up rewriting a bunch of stuff. And then you end up getting these pages back, and they're beautiful, and you can't believe someone actually took things that you wrote and made them into art. So that's sort of an amazing process, I think. And with SuicideGirls, it's also been really amazing. And I'm working with Steve Niles and Missy Suicide, so we all have a lot of opinions about it. So it's it's a fun process. There's a lot of people doing a lot of work on it, which is good and bad, I guess. but in the same way that acting is, you have a director, you have a DP, you have actors, you have writers, you're all trying to put in your creative stamp, I guess, in some way.
So tell us, you mentioned Suicide Girls. Tell us a little bit about the premise for Suicide Girls for our listeners who might be interested.
Suicide Girls is a website. I'm sure you guys know about it. It is a website with naked girls on it who have tattoos,
right?
Which is exciting. And they wanted a comic book. They've sort of branched out into essentially everything. I think Missy Suicide is sort of creating an empire over there. And I don't know, they were like, pitch an idea, see if we like it. And I was like, sweet. So I wrote up this idea, and it's the idea I originally pitched, which is this sort of elite not crime fighting, elite fighting team of women. They're all Suicide Girls, and they use the website as sort of a communication tool and a front. And they fight this giant religious organization that's trying to take away women's rights and suppress women's sexuality. And there's cyborgs in there, which I sort of insisted on. So the religious people have a lot of cyborgs too.
Nice. So you get the sci-fi bent in there as well.
I kind of wanted it, and I had this whole idea that, the reason I think Suicide Girls is sort of a cool site is because the women on there blog, and they design their own photo shoots, and they sort of humanize. There's a ton of naked girls on the internet. Let's not be crazy, but I think Suicide Girls sort of humanizes the girls, and they say, like, look, these girls have personalities, they have interests, they like music, and that's why I think it's like an interesting site. Like, I kind of like being on there and looking at the photos and then looking at the, at what kind of music they like, and it's just sort of like rounds them out as like real people as opposed to just naked girl with her legs spread or whatever, which there's nothing wrong with that. Power to you, whatever you want to do. So my idea was that robots were the opposite of like a human woman. That I don't know if that works at all, that metaphor, but for me, that was my idea.
Yeah. I asked. No, I'm just kidding.
You asked, right?
No, but it does play into. It continues to get you into the writing of comics and stuff like that. What future projects do you have in your plate, other than maybe? Obviously, you're still working in these comics. Are you done writing the Suicide Girls? Is that a finished project?
No, actually, Zane and I are just doing rewrites on issue 3. So issue 1 and 2 are in the can, or issue 1 is done, issue 2 is still being drawn. We're writing issue 3, and then I think 4 will be the final issue for that. It's just a mini.
Very good. So you're breaking into the comic book world. That's kind of cool. And you've obviously you've been a comic fan then. Yeah,
I have not as long. I feel like I'm always very behind on the sci-fi comic horror world, especially because my friends, I feel like, are the most well-read and nerdiest of the nerds, so they can like bring up stuff that I'm like, I have no idea what that movie is, or I have no idea what that book is. But yeah, I've been reading comics for maybe 10 years or so.
Oh, very cool. Do you have a favorite that you go back to?
Ever?
Of all time. Putting you on the spot here.
The comic I read that got me into comics was The Invisibles.
Okay.
That was one of my favorites of all time. The one that I get excited for every week is X Factor, or every month is X Factor.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. I did not grow up in comics. So I kind of grew up, my sci-fi was reading. I read a lot of sci-fi, and then I got into television and movies after that. And every once in a while, I'll get into comics. I'm into Walking Dead. I love The Walking Dead, but I don't watch. I don't get into a lot of other comics. I don't have the time. That's more than anything. But
it takes so much time, and I do feel like the more I write, the less I read, which is unfortunate. That I just don't have the time to go and read everything I want to read. I have a stack of things to read on my shelf right now, which is depressing to me.
Well, Brea, if I could add one more thing to it, I ran into somebody locally. Him and a few of his friends were putting out their own zombie comic book. It's a World War II zombie comic called Fubar.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So so just maybe something to check out. In your future reading.
Yeah.
I wonder if we need to combine at some point and do some sort of, how the zombies went from 1920 to 19, because mine's in 1929.
Right.
That's
right.
So that could be like, the stretch that they've still been there or something. We need to maybe combine our forces somehow.
Yeah.
Crossover.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
What future projects do you have in your plate?
Let's see. I have a movie coming out on Sci-Fi Channel this year, which that's, I guess, the one sci-fi thing that I have going, called Ice Road Terror. I don't know when that airs, but it's I play a scientist who's fighting a giant ice creature. So that's pretty fun. And then I'm working on a couple other comics projects that we're pitching to various people right now. And then I co-wrote a movie, and we're hoping to shoot that in the fall. That's the thing that I've been working on the most, and it's an apocalyptic road trip movie that I star in along with my co-writer, Vera Miao. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Oh, very cool. Well, I love post-apocalyptic stuff, so I'll be looking forward to that.
Well, it's not post-apocalyptic.
Oh, it's apocalyptic.
So it's happening during an apocalypse.
Oh, yeah.
That makes sense. I don't want people to be confused and to think that it's,
Right, absolutely.
It's no Mad Max.
Bring out the guns. No, very cool. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us here. Before we go, where can people find out information about the things that you're doing and the things that you're involved in?
My website is breagrant.com, and I try to update it once a week or so with just things that are happening. But my Twitter is really the best way. That I update every day, obviously, and get to communicate with people a lot more and talk to fans and talk to people. And that's just at Brea Grant.
Thank you for being with us here tonight, Brea.
No problem.
And chatting with us here on the Sci-Fi Diner podcast.